we have a speaker meeting today, and we are honoured to have Rita Q. So Rita, it's over to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Alan. Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. My name is Rita Q, recovered compulsive overeater. I'm just going to quickly say the set aside prayer just so God takes over. God, set aside everything I think I know about you, everything I think I know about myself, everything I think I know about others, my own recovery, so that I have an open mind and new experience with all these things. Please help me see the truth and get me out of your way. So I'll start off to say I'm 47 years of age. I live in Manchester. I am obviously Irish. I was born in Northern Ireland. I grew up in the Troubles, but did manage to get to see the peace process, which was incredible. But I grew up obviously in quite a fractious place because, you know, from what was going on. And I do believe in God. I want to make the God is my God, but it's the God of my understanding. So I hope, you know, that's okay for everybody. So, but obviously where I grew up, people were killing each other because they were the wrong flavor of God. So, you know, but meal times are very, very important at home. And so we were always around the table. And what was really interesting was my mum used to say, we just, you know, my brothers were all older than me and we just ate, we were big foodies. We still all are. But I was the one that really developed the addiction, you know, and I remember food from a very, very early age. I would pick, and I shared this the other day, I would pick birthday parties based on who cooked the best. Irish mammies cook brilliantly, but whose mum made the best cakes. Oh, I was going to that party, even if I didn't like the girl. And I shared, and I'm so ashamed of this. There was a girl in my school, in primary school, and I didn't really like her, but her mum used to give out the best lucky bags at the party. And I'd be distracted. Everybody else would be playing or on the, you know, bouncy castle or on the trampoline. And I'd be thinking, I'd be at the cake table. And I even used to eat stuff I didn't like, you know. So I was eating against my will from a very, very young age, you know. And it was okay because I did a lot of sport, did a lot of swimming and gymnastics and stuff, and netball. And then as I grew older, I went to school and I hated it. I went to boarding school and I comforted my way through it, you know, and the weight started to pile on. I was always kind of heavy set, you know, big boned, as they say, but realistically I was fat and I was getting fatter. And I came over to England to come to university and I discovered alcohol. Now I am not an alcoholic, thank God. That's not an addiction I've picked up, but drink is a real gateway drug for me, plus it's full of sugar. So I began to notice a few things that I didn't, you know, I began to notice that when I went out, I'd eat a lot. And a really famous pizza, I hope it's okay to mention food, but a really famous restaurant over here used to do a student thing where you could pay £5 and eat as much as you want. And I used to remember coming out of there, everybody's nodding. I mean, anybody who lives in England will know who I mean. And, you know, I used to come out of there sick, and I mean sick to the rafters. Now, I never threw up. I just didn't stop eating. I just did not stop eating. I ate like Bill drank. There was no doubt about it, you know. And, you know, it's really interesting on the steps. Step one is the only step that mentions the food. You know, there's just 3 layers. First, we have the physical allergy. Then there's the disease of the mind. But what's underneath it all is that irritability and discontent, restless. You know, and it says in the big book, my favorite paragraph of the big book, I'm going to talk about that a lot, is men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. Although Rita knew it was injurious, she could not after a time differentiate the true from the false. Rita's compulsive overeating life was the only one she knew. And that's the way I read it when I read it to sponsees with their name inserted, because it was, I genuinely didn't know I was an addict. And my brother tried to approach me about it, one of my brothers who I'm very close to, and he said, I think you've got an eating problem. I was like, what? What are you on about? I says, look, I'm just a bit greedy. I'll go on a diet. I've been to every pain way you can imagine. The only thing I've not done is surgery, because there was something deep seated in me that knew that wouldn't work. I knew it wouldn't work unless it was a lobotomy, and I wasn't going to go for that. So, you know, what happened? So I think about the time he spoke to me, I was heading towards, I'll say it in English, probably 24 pounds, 300 or 24 stone. God, if it's 24 pounds, that'd be something. 24 stone, which is about nearly 350 pounds. We're in about 340 mark. And then I got diagnosed in 2002 with a very rare autoimmune condition. It's called granulomatosis with polyangiitis. I normally say it's very similar to lupus, but there was only 1 in 12 million people that had it. And they gave it to me on a piece of paper. And he said, you need to Google this. I've never said that to a patient in my life, he said, but I've only ever seen it in autopsy. So he said, you need to go away. And he said, I don't think you've got long. And I thought, great. So, because chemotherapy is what treats it. So I had a lot of immunotherapy and chemotherapy, and then they put me on whopping dose of steroids. Now, as a compulsive overeater, putting me on steroids is probably like putting a heroin addict on methadone. Massive doses. I was off to the races. And my brother, as I said, had approached me about a way before that, and I just took a massive hissy fit, and I thought, how dare you? There's nothing wrong with me. And then the Christmas of 2002, horrific. Couldn't stop eating. Just could not stop eating. Now my binging wasn't. You hear people in the meeting say they bought bags and bags of stuff. That's not how it happened for me. I'd have my breakfast, and then I'd make a cup of tea, and then I'd have one biscuit, and I swear to God, it was one. There's the mental twist coming in now. Did you see it? Just coming across my lovely thing, saying, I'll just have one. Of course, yeah, one packet. And then I was on the car driving to the next supermarket to get another packet. But actually, my house was always well stocked. It's a joke. Everybody always says if there was nuclear war, they come to my house, because I have a disease and more, and whatever that looks like. I can't go to Costco. I can't be trusted, when I'm in the food, because I just, I end up buying the shop. So, and I was just hopeless. And that Christmas, something changed. My sister-in-law said something to me. I had no hair. I was 25 stone, 300, and I was definitely 350 pounds. And she said, you know what? She said, what's wrong? You haven't stopped eating since you got here. I was mortified, because really it was. I always joke, breakfast became lunch, lunch became dinner. It was just one big day of food, And I thought, oh my God, everybody's noticed. I mean, how could you not notice? I wasn't fitting into plane seats. I was breaking furniture. This didn't happen, as I always joke. It didn't happen because I tripped over a box of Pringles or I had a snack accident. This happened because I couldn't stop frigging eating. And I just thought, I might have to go to this away thing. So I rang my brother up, really disgruntled. I'll do it. Of course, I did the old diet thing. I'll do it in the new year. But I was in Ireland, so I came back, rang up my brother, said, tell me more about this OA shenanigans. And he said, yeah, here's a number. It's around the corner from your house. And I Googled it and I thought, oh, feck, it is. And there was no, when you just think, God had sent out a search and rescue so many times for me. And I was just like, run along. I'm waiting for the next diet bus. I'll be grand, kind of thing. And then all of a sudden I went in. And I remember before I went in, I thought, this is going to be brilliant. They're all going to be massive. I'm finally going to be the smallest person in the room. Oh God, no. I went in and they were all slim. I was gutted. I was really gutted. As a big woman, I was gutted. And then they were all talking about eating out of bins and stuff. And I thought, what? I've never had out of a bin. I thought, that's disgusting. And then I remembered, I didn't need to. I was a bin. I never fucking let anything go to the bin. I had it. It went to me. That's why I never had out of bins. And people always talk about willingness. I think willingness is overrated. You need desperation. And I was desperate. And that's what you need. For me, it trumps willingness every time. And I just thought, you know what, I'm going to listen to them. So they started talking about getting 3 meals a day and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, so I tried that. That was hard for me because I was somebody who ate from morning to night. Even if it was small portions of things, it was consistent. You couldn't have differentiated my meals. So I just thought, right, I'll get 3 meals a day. And then they were all talking about giving up sugar. And I thought, oh, hang on a sec. I can get married in a few years. The usual sort of forward thinking when you're not living in the daytime as a recovered person. It's like, I can get married in a few years. I need to taste my wedding cake. All this crap, right? And that was fine. And then I thought, right, I'll only have dessert when I eat out. That was the plan. Only when I eat out. And then my husband, about 2 weeks into OA, says, we're eating out an awful lot. And I said, are we? I hadn't noticed. Of course I noticed. I knew fine rightly we were eating out a lot. We'd no kids. We'd loads of disposable income. The reason we were eating out is because I had set this rule that I was only going to have dessert when we had out. So, I used to bully him when we went out for dinner before I was in program. It used to be, you're not having a side dish. You're not having dessert. You're not going to have the cheese. What do you mean? Honestly, it was like being in an MI5 interview with me. What do you mean? How many? And even when we went out for friends, the menu would come and I'd be like this. I'd be sitting looking at the menu. I'd be thinking, I'm looking at my friend and I'd size up my friends. I have very good friends, by the way, but I sized them up and thinking, wonder how many starters I can get away with in front of them or side dishes. Wonder they having dessert. And they'd be pouring their hearts out to me. I might be leaving my husband. Really? I thought, I don't really care. You having a side dish? Because I was so caught up in myself. Do you know what I mean? It was all about me to the tune of I. And then I decided, right, the desserts have got to go. I'm only going to have a wee hot chocolate when I come home from work. And I did, 8 o'clock at night. And then suddenly I was drinking hot chocolate at 5 o'clock. And then I was sending my PA out for at 2 o'clock. And I thought, this isn't right. I thought this. So I gave it up. And the way I look at food now, anything I've got to grieve, negotiate, or barter has got to go. Anything that takes time up in my head has got to go. So I had 5 years then of blissful abstinence. It was wonderful. I was on a desert island. I was just having the time of my life. I was sponsoring really well, going around really, really content in a way. And then on my honeymoon, I got married in 2008, and then on my honeymoon, that lurking notion it talks about on page 33 of the big book, it's, it says, it makes it really clear, once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic, but it says, if we are planning to stop drinking, there must be no reservation of any kind, nor any lurking notion that someday we will be immune to alcohol. And what sums up my relapse is this case contains a powerful lesson. Most of us have believed that if we remain sober for a long stretch, we could thereafter drink normally. And you know what? I did for a while, but it's like the saying goes: if you stop doing the things that keep you in the program, you'll start doing the things that brought you to the program. And I started to eat. I had a chocolate bar on this flight, and I was fine. I went to OA in San Francisco, went to OA in LA. We flew down to New Zealand. I went to OA all over there, Australia, Thailand, Bali, everywhere. I was getting meetings, but I was picking up slightly, just slightly. And I remember somebody in Australia saying to me, God, if I was you, I'd be really, really nervous. And I remember thinking, I'm not at all, because the disease had really got in. And the disease had got in because I broke off my higher power, my relationship with my higher power. God had turned into Santa Claus yet again. I have 2 rooms in my house, one for recovery and one for relapse. So what I used to do is lock God in the relapse room, go downstairs, eat my head off, come up at night and say, right, God, let me win the lottery. Let me keep eating and be thin. Let me do well at work. All this rubbish. And on paper, I had, I have a good life, no mortgage. I retired at 44, a great husband, and I do have really, really good friends. They really showed up for me. But what happened, I just didn't believe God could and would if he were sought. I just thought I could with his help. Whereas it should be he can with my help. Sorry, I'm thumb up by mistake there. So, what got me then is I started to eat. And then I came in and out of the program, and that restless irritability and discontentedness started again. And there's 4 impediments they talk about in the Oxford group to recovery. And one of them is this resentment you won't get rid of, which is step 4. Secret you won't tell, which is step 5. The vicarious thrill, like gossips, 6 and 7. And then a restitution you won't make in 8 and 9. And then refusing to do 10, 11 and not really caring about 12. So I was back in the food and I was back in bad. I put on 140 pounds, over 10 stone. I got up to 380 pounds. My dad dropped dead, and then my mum dropped dead a year later. And then I got stage 4 cancer, and it was all over. I just couldn't stop it. I must be the only cancer patient. The hospital, I live really near the Christie. It's a brilliant cancer hospital in Manchester. And I must have been the only cancer patient that put on weight, serious amount of weight. And they love me because I used to be an inpatient all the time. I'd be entertaining the trips, and they'd be coming in, they'd be offering me everything extra. And I'd be like, oh, yeah. I'd be like, I just remember chatting and eating and having chemo. And it was just ridiculous. And, I have a disease and more. And this is an ego deflating. I have to deflate my ego every day, because my ego is like a bouncy castle. So I go to sleep and it reinflates itself. And I wake up in the morning, it's there. And I'm thinking, how did that get there? Because I've had 9 hours or 8 hours of untreated disease. I've got to re-deflate it again all day, So I had a spiritual awakening. This does not happen for everybody, but I always say to people, this happened for me the way it happened, because I was in big trouble and I needed God to slap me across the face. I was in the bath. I was on my 9th bout of sepsis. How I managed to still be alive was a miracle in itself. And again, I fitted in the bath fine. I always say I got stuck in the bath. It wasn't physically stuck in the bath. I had no energy. The bone marrow pain was horrendous. And I was on morphine. I was really ill. And I remember thinking, I let the water of the bath, hot baths really help the pain. So I let the water of the bath go out. And I remember thinking, oh, I can't get up. I can't move, because I was drained of all energy. And I remember seeing the cord and I couldn't pull it. And I thought, I can't pull this cord, because there is no nerve, unless the rock works in this hospital. There is nobody that's going to be able to lift me out of this bath. I was 380 pounds. I thought, I'm sunk. Well, I was literally sunk. I finally got out of the bath, and I thought, and I heard, sorry, just before I did that, I heard really clearly my higher power say to me, you need to go back to OA. And I knew it did. I thought, yeah, I think you're right. Stretch marks, bleeding practically. It was horrendous. Bald, bleeding, awful. And I did. I thought, I need to go back to OA, because I'd hit that cycle again. I'm just going to share something really quickly with you. There's two that I really, really love. This is the site. This is, oh no, yeah, hold on. Let me make sure. Sorry, I shared the wrong picture there. This is my cycle of compulsive overeating. I feel irritable, restless, and discontented. I start thinking about the food. That's the, the disease of the mind kicking in, the mental obsession. I'm going to have one. If I said yesterday, if I had £1 for every time I said I'm just going to have one, I would thank you, Tom. I would be a multimillionaire. Then the craving begins again. Then I'm binging again. Then I start feeling sad about it all. And then I swear I'll never do this again, and I'll start on Monday. So what happened? Got out of the bath, got out of hospital about 2 weeks later because I was having another operation. And then I thought, I was in a wheelchair, and I remember going into the city centre in Manchester and going back to the meeting. And just shuffling in because I could walk a bit, but not very far. And I just thought, and that was 3 years ago. On last Tuesday, I've been sober 3 years. I never looked back, and I started working the program again. What changed this time for me? Step one, I'm powerless over food. I realized that, £380 taught me that. And that's what I always say, I sat in fat serenity. I didn't lose my recovery completely. I came in and out, and I went through the steps again. I did get chinks of it, but I sat in fat serenity then. I ate enough food to keep me big because I hadn't quite handed over the food. I'm very clear about food now, and I'm very happy to send out any of the stuff I mentioned. I do have stuff that's not OA approved, but it's a food sheet to help you work out your binge foods. I have a red list and a green list. I don't believe in amber lists because they, to me, are lists you just want to eat like they're green, and you can't. I have to give my day over every morning. I wake up, I say to God, take this day from me because I will make a hash of it. I make sure that I make outreach calls. I make sure that I'm connected, and I try and own all my resentments and fears, because when I'm in the disease, 50% of what my head tells me are lies, and the other 50% believes it. And when I'm in the disease, I become God. I become that actor who wants to run the show, which is horrific. And, I heard something once brilliant in a meeting, consistency trumps intensity every time for me. If I consistently do the right thing for my recovery, I will stay recovered. But when I was talking about, sorry, I know this is about losing your conscious contact with God. I had to rework at that, because in step 2, I enter into, so I know I'm powerless over food. Step 2, I enter into, it's the spiritual principle of 1 is honesty. So it's getting honest about your food. 2, there's hope. There is hope. And I want to give people, there's probably people in here who are still eating. I couldn't get out of the food. I mean it, I couldn't get out of it. I wanted to die every single day for about 18 months. How I didn't take my own life was a miracle. Especially after my mother's death. The cancer, when they told me I had stage 4 cancer, I'm cancer free, by the way, but when they told me I had cancer, they said, I've never seen anybody take the news like you. But I was numb. I was grieving, and I was eating. So I don't know. I just said, well, my mum's passed away. It's the worst thing that could have happened. It was really interesting. But step 2, and I might go back to that. That's where you enter into a covenant with God, as far as I'm concerned. That is where I have started to have an agreement with God. Step 3, I work on that. I start believing that God can do for me what I can't do for myself. I start thinking, but it's about giving everything to him. It's not just recovery. No longer is about getting what I want. It's about wanting what I have and achieving that, and I didn't want to be selfish. I didn't want to be caught up in myself again. And I love the fact it always says, you've got to be hopeless to find hope again. So then step 4, made a search and fearless moral inventory. That was okay, because I knew the second time around I had to absolutely gut myself, because I couldn't have anything lurking. There's something in the AA 12 and 12 I just wanted to read, that's really strong. It says, no other kind, when it talks about our disease, no other kind of bankruptcy is like this one. Alcohol or food now becomes a rapacious creditor, bleeds us of all self-sufficiency and all will to resist its demands. Once a stark fact is accepted, our bankruptcy as going human concerns is complete. I knew the food wanted to be dead. And if it didn't kill me, it would have settled for miserable. And I was miserable when I was in the food. On paper, I wasn't. And outside, I still laughed. I went to loads of gigs. I had fun. I traveled the world. But I felt half dead inside. And the self-seeking, getting people to like me, trying to manipulate people to like me, trying to manipulate situations. It was like, there used to be an old TV show in England called The Generation Game, and the guys used to come on and spin plates. that was me. I span plates all the time. They were crashing, I'd spin another one, and, you know, everything was out of control. It didn't seem that way, but that's what it was like inside. That was that layer underneath, that third layer that I talk about in step one, that unmanageability, which is really disordered thinking. You know, it's not having emotional sobriety. You know, it's the irrepressible discontent, it's resentment, and it says in the big book, resentment is one of the number one takedown of alcoholics. You know, so to go back to the steps, step 6, 7, and 8. I'm starting to grow now. I've handed over what I've done. 6, 7, and 8 towards 9 is our growth steps. And I love doing this with sponsees. I'm actually around these steps with a couple of sponsees, and it's brilliant listening to their willingness to get well and their want to get well. Because, you know, once you get, this is where the power starts to come in. The power flows in at 9 for me anyway. That's where, and I always work well in visuals. So God to me is like when they land on the moon, they have the breathing apparatus back to the spaceship, or whatever you call it, the rocket. And, you know, every time I addict or don't do the right thing, it's like squeezing that oxygen and I can't breathe. And then I use food to breathe. And I never ate anyway. I just inhaled my food. I never tasted it. You know, the first bite always demanded the second screaming for the third. By the fourth, I didn't even know what I was eating. I could have been eating dirt, you know. So 6, 7, 8, and 9 were starting to grow. 10, continue to take personal inventory. The biggest thing that's worked the best for me in my recovery is the pause, prayer, and use spiritual energy. You know, I'm traffic lights, somebody cuts me up, I want to go, would you just, I remember one time doing that and pretend to stroke my hair because I'd nearly given fingers, and it was hilarious. And I thought, higher power, it's having that pause, it's praying, now bless them, change me. The amount of times I say bless them, change me with gritted teeth in one day is incredible. I must keep tally next time. Again, I'd be a millionaire for that. You know, I have to own my step 10s, my fears. I have a slight fear at the minute, you know, of something that just happened before the meeting, not of coming on here, just I'm waiting for a scan. I thought, oh, and I wrote it out, handed it over, it goes, you know, it just leaves me. God takes it, somebody listens to it, God takes it. Step 11, sought through prayer and meditation. I love to talk, but meditation, prayer is petition, but meditation is listening. And it's that two-way prayer for me now. And when I'm angry at God, I write him a letter and I say, I'm angry at you because, for every single line. I set my timer for 30 minutes, I do that. It really takes care of things. But it's about keeping up. It's about keeping up that conscious contact. And then 12, having had the spiritual awakening for me, is working with others. It says the foundation stone of our recovery is working with others, and it really works for me. And I've not been feeling well the last few days. I've just been a wee bit off. And one of my sponsees went through a step with me this morning. She said, are you well enough? And I said, always for this. Always. Even if I'm on my deathbed, I'll listen to you if I can. I said, because, you know, this is what keeps me well. And this, you know, it's just amazing. It's such a gift. And I just wanted to share what my life was like in the big book. For purposes of the recording, I'm sharing the bedevilments that they talk about in page 52 versus our promises on page 83. Now, the big book's full of promises, as we know, but these bedevilments, we were having trouble with personal relationships, couldn't control our emotional natures, prey to misery and depression, couldn't make a living, had a feeling of uselessness. I was always full of fear. I was unhappy and I was happy, but when I worked the steps, when I became recovered, everything on the right came true, except for the feelings of insecurity with money. Sometimes that was, you know, that's just a wee thing that dogs me, but actually it's left me now. For the most part, it's left me. And that's what happened. And then I'll just share one more thing as well to show you my pictures, because I don't always show these, but I just want to show you the circle of addiction. So that's me, top left, recovered about about 2 weeks before I picked up. Me in Hong Kong on honeymoon, and one of the places we went to, that's me with stage 4 cancer on the right. The one in the red is me about a week before I came into OA, back to OA this time. The one of me with my head in my hands basically sums up relapse. That's the only reason I put it in there. There's me with my sober AF hat, and there is myself. I think that was just after a trip to St. Ives. Oh, I just muted myself, sorry. And then I just wanted to read something that's really important that I got the other day, and I think it's about relapse, because this is, you know, I'm a relapse survivor, and that's how I see myself, because I want to just tell anybody out there is hope, but you've got to work these steps like your hair's on fire. Because food, I couldn't see what food was doing to me. I could only see what it was doing for me. Everybody else could see what it was doing to me. And you know, the pain of eating has got outweighed putting the food down. And the food has to go down. For me, it had to go down because I can't hear things. I can't hear anything. And you know, the price of recovery is eternal vigilance. And the thing is, sometimes people say, God, this is a lot of hard work. Yeah, it is. But so was eating. So was like not fitting into my clothes, breaking furniture, feeling sick, not wanting to have sex with my husband because I felt so ill all the time, you know, bursting out of everything. That was hard work. Feeling shit about myself was hard work, you know. So I was going to just say these are the relapse promises, and I'll send these to anybody who wants them. But I thought it was very interesting because it changes the promises. If we dive headlong into relapse, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. We are going to know a new pain, and we will remember the misery that made us want to quit in the first place. We will regret our decisions, our actions, and feel as though we've lost control. We will comprehend the words addiction and insanity, and we will know self-loathing. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how there are still more opportunities to make more mistakes and experience more pain. A feeling of uselessness and self-pity will reappear. We will lose interest in fellows and gain interest in selfish things. Self-seeking will be our way of life. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and economic insecurity will return. We will intuitively know how to sabotage our lives and the lives of those we care about. We will suddenly realize that we are doing for ourselves what even our worst enemies wouldn't wish upon us. The price of admission into recovery was pain and misery, and upon leaving, we are entitled to a full refund. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. We've witnessed this pattern frequently, and we see the results, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They always materialize if you give in to them. Just stay. And for me, that is what happened. You know, I give in every time. I just give in to that lie. And, you know, when my emotion, I always say I'm an intelligent woman, but when my emotions, when I'm not well, go up against my intelligence, my emotional side will always win, and it will want to be fed, you know. And my only way of working that out is to keep in fit spiritual condition. This is a spiritual malady. And half measures, I'm quoting the book here, half measures avail us nothing. Because what happened for me is when I had one leg in and one leg out, I just did the split and I ended up more bloody pain than I'd ever been, you know. That's what I did. So I just want to give hope, you know, this disease is horrendous and I will always be a compulsive overeater. But I can hear nature again now, and that white noise I had the whole way through, and everybody knows that you're trying to tune the radio in the old-fashioned radio. That I had that all the time when I was eating, because the disease was just there. He was a rapacious predator. He was sat beside me, you know, talking to me, telling me how rubbish I was. And then I started working the steps, and that noise it started to go into the distance. And then all of a sudden, it wasn't there anymore. And I shared this the other day. In the morning, I think I got to the gym at 6:30 in the morning because I worked with my trainer on Tuesday. He's brutal, Australian man, lovely but brutal. And you know, the sunrise was happening over the gym, and I started to cry. And I thought, 4 years ago, I was starting my chemotherapy, and I thought, I never thought I'd see that sunrise like that again.
2 minutes to go, Reese.
Thanks, Tom. And it was the most beautiful thing, and to be able to experience that. But when you're in the food, nothing is beautiful. It's all tarnished. You know, it's just tarnished and dark, and it's sludge, and I hated it. And for today, I'm not there, and I want to give you hope. I want to say please in the morning and thank you at night. And my time in between, I want to help all the compulsive overeaters by the grace of God. And every day I've got to deflate my ego. As I always say, ego has 3 things. I heard this, one of the big speakers always says this. He says, make me right, make me different, and make me feel good right now. And I just have to get out of my own way. That's why I'd say the set aside prayer so much. You know, I ate like Bill drank, and I don't anymore. I just, you know, and I'm so glad. Recovery has given me freedom that I could never, a new freedom that I could never have, you know, even imagined. Relapse has taught me that, you know, you can return, you can get back, but it's hell on earth. My first recovery was easy. My second, you know, it was a gift. But my second one I had to really work at. But now it's just a pleasure. Don't get me wrong, by the way, there's some days I come to the party, I'm happy as Larry. There's other days, especially around the business side of things, I just think, oh, I really don't want to do this. But actually it's challenging. Anything I don't want to do that makes me uncomfortable, I always persevere with it. The opposite with the food, anything that makes me uncomfortable, I get rid of it. you know, because my attic will always want to, it'll want to keep me in the dark. But I love the sunlight of the spirit, and that I never want to lose, ever. And I think I'll leave it there. I think I've said enough. Thanks for listening, guys.
Wow. Thank you so much, Rita. Powerful share. Very powerful share. Okay, so we're now going to move into our Q&A section of the meeting, which is also being recorded. So if you have a question, please post it into the chat function to our host, Kara, and we will ask the questions on your behalf. And I'll hand the rest of the meeting over to Kara.
Thank you, Alan. Rita, amazing. Thank you so much. I do have a couple questions already in the chat, so we'll get started. Rita, you do lots of service. How do you keep reaching out and doing service when you're feeling tired and you can feel the self-pity circling? Thank you.
That's a brilliant question, actually, because that happened today. I think I was saying in my share. I think my sponsor is very, very good at boundaries, and she knows what's going on with me. So there are some days, particularly recently, I get a booster of immunotherapy by infusion every 6 months. And the last one I had took me out. I went down like a pack of cards. I think it's because it's built up so much in my system. So, you know, I was able to say, it's about having boundaries for me. It's about saying, you know what, I can't do this today. I'm really sorry. I know we've scheduled a call. Some days I do say that to people. I'm like, I have to schedule in calls because I won't sit on the phone 24/7 either. And because I don't want to get to the point where I'm resentful of that. There's only so many step downs you can write. And and then in the evening, I don't do a lot of work in the evenings, to be honest. Most of my meetings are during the day. I don't really do a lot of sponsorship work in the evenings because I do it in the day if I can. But if I take people through the steps relatively quickly through the big book. If I do that, if I have to, I'll do it in the evening. Obviously, if they've got kids and stuff, I'll make allowances. It's not a problem. I'm not completely mean, but that's it. It's just about having boundaries around the time. And it's being honest. It's rigorous honesty and everything. I don't feel well today. We are humans, you know. We're spiritual beings in human bodies, unfortunately, and they let us down big time sometimes, you know. But I do take calls. Actually, I had the norovirus. I was hospitalized with the norovirus last year, and I took outreach calls because I thought it's better than thinking about food, you know. So there you go. I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Rita. Lots of questions about how to get the promises of relapse that you read and some of the other slides.
Just send me the email there. Emails, anybody can see it. rita.quinn@me.com. I'll whack them over to you, no problem at all.
Fabulous. Thank you. Rita, how do you communicate with your higher power?
Oh, well, if it's a good day, it's really loving and kind and beautiful. And it's like candy. And if it's a bad day, I'm like, what the F are you giving me now? I had to go back to the cancer hospital last week for a checkup, and I have to have a scan because there's something a wee bit not right. And that was a little fear I had before I came on the meeting, actually. So just because I felt sick all day, and I thought, oh, don't tell me. And I was saying to God, you're having a laugh. If I have finally gotten fit, I'm out of my wheelchair, I've lost quite a lot of weight, and I'm continuing to do so, I'll not be happy. So it just depends on the day. And then I had a very bad blockage just before Christmas with higher power, really blocked. So I wrote out, I did that exercise, set my timer for half an hour. I said, I'm angry at God because, and I had to write that line. It was something I got from an old sponsor, actually, a friend, sorry, and her old sponsor. And then I wrote, I'm angry at God because, and I kept doing that until it left me. And I handed it over, I read it out to my sponsor. So that's it. I'm honest with God. It's rigorous honesty. It's not pious fakeness that I would have had as a kid growing up with my cradle faith, if that makes sense. I talk to him, but I have to develop them. If anybody wants to have a good podcast on that about, you know, developing your relationship with your higher power, it's such an important relationship, because abstinence isn't the most important thing in my recovery. It's my relationship with my higher power, because without it, I won't get abstinent. I won't get anything. So that's that.
Thank you. Lots of questions in the queue here. So here's the next one. I've been back in relapse for 2 weeks, struggling to find the willingness to put food down, even though I am deeply unhappy. How did you find the willingness in the early days? I feel like I'm still relying on self-will.
This is funny. Somebody else asked me this the other day. Honestly, at the beginning for me, I don't want to say I turned it into a diet, but I had it really structured. So when I came back, I knew what I couldn't eat realistically. I knew it was sugar, anything grabbable, anything I can do that with, you know, but it wasn't quite easy. It took me a while to let skinny popcorn go. I held on to that like a dying relative. Oh my God, did I hang on? Because there's no sugar in it. You know, it's always, but there's no sugar in it. If it's not nutritious, it's just emotion for me, you know. So what I did at the beginning was, right, this is what I'm having for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I grabbed somebody, I said, can I send you my breakfast, lunch, and dinner? I took photos. I got a sponsor early on. My sponsor left at the beginning of lockdown because they were on the front line. Not a problem. Got another sponsor. And actually that relationship had been through the steps at that stage, so it was okay. But I know at the beginning it's really difficult. Try and get 3 meals a day. But the problem is you need to work out your alcoholic foods, because if you do not work out your alcoholic foods, they will trigger you into the phenomenon of craving, and then the mental obsession and the mental twist will start, and you'll think you can just have one and you'll be back at the beginning. So it was about that. It is about, we are powerless over food, but we're not helpless. You've got to do your part. And at the beginning, it is very much an action plan, right? I'll go out for a walk every day. I'll do 20 minutes because I had to get walking again because I couldn't walk. So that was part of mine, but it was just keeping it really simple. Morning, noon, and night. You know, porridge in the morning, something for lunch, salad for lunch or whatever, you know, veg and whatever for dinner, you know, just keeping it really simple. Hope that helps. And calling people, calling people. Isolation. Sorry, Cara. Isolation. The disease wants you to sit in a room alone in the dark. Ring people. No matter how crap you feel, ring them and put your number in chat. Say, I'm desperate, I need outreach, and make outreach calls, because people, you will hear your story and you'll hear how people got well.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. All right, next question. Where do you start with a fellow in relapse, Rita? Do you have a go-to approach to support them?
Depends where they're at. If they've relapsed when they're working with me, we do the slipping and sliding questions, which you can get on the OA.org website. I ask them to start thinking about where they're agnostic in their life, what parts of their life they're agnostic in. You know, like, are you agnostic around your health, your work, your partner? I get them to do a really honest food plan. All my sponsees send me photographs of what they eat. So I get them to photograph all their meals because it keeps them honest. I do that for my sponsor. They do that for me. It's just the way she does that. My sponsor does that for her sponsor. But one thing I'll say, and it is a quote out of the big book, the definition of a bottom is when the next thing you're about to lose is more important to you than the alcohol. And that bottom is different for everybody. And some people die before they get there. Some people will die. They just won't make it. It's a horrible thing to say. Absolutely horrible thing to say, but it happens because the food is horrendous. And I think I just try my best, but some people aren't willing. And sometimes you've got to let people go. I don't let sponsees go actually usually, but sometimes you can just be making the problem worse. You know, sometimes people have to go out and do more research. They really got to research that food, you know, and that's what I had to do. Wild horses wouldn't have stopped me getting to the fridge when I was in relapse. And when I was done, I was done. The desperation kicked in and I was done. So you just got to be patient, send them towards, you know, good podcasts, get them to check in. If somebody's a sponsee relapse recently, I said, you need to check in with me every hour if you can. Just say, okay, I'm okay, or it's okay, you know, the food, whatever, even if it's just they want to send me a mood check, they can do that. Because it's just about going back to basics. And it gets easier, I think, the more days, once you start working the steps and the cleaner you become. It gets slightly, well, not easier, but you know what I mean. It's easy. It's easier to do the steps when you're not in the food. That's what I'm trying to say.
Thank you, Rita. Our next question. What do you do in a service role when you feel out of your depth?
Okay.
I ask somebody who's done the service role similar for help, or if there's somebody I can shadow. I took on taken on a few treasury roles that maybe and quite a big one, but I was really lucky. I had a really good backup actually. Charlotte here, you know, she was a really good backup for helping me with spreadsheets and stuff. I'm rubbish at spreadsheets. I honestly go into meltdown every time I think of Excel and stuff like that. So you know, it's just about, it's like anything. Speak to somebody who's gone before you. That's why we have sponsors, you know. Sponsor is there to guide you. So if I'm in a service role and I feel a wee bit out of my depth, I'll think, I wonder how somebody else would do that. And it's just about outreaching, putting it in a WhatsApp group. Anybody here been a secretary for a meeting, or, you know, those kind of things? We don't like asking for help. We're really cocky people. And I think, you know, asking for help, humility has been the best version you can be of yourself, you know, and to do that, you need help. You can't do that alone. God and your fellows will help. That's all.
Thank you. We don't have any more questions in the chat. Does anybody want to add any more questions in the chat? On your mind, Rita, you've been so fabulous.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about like your routine in your day? What does your day look like?
Yeah, sure. You see, this is so funny because some people, I remember being on a meeting once in New York, and a woman says, yes, I meditate for 2 hours every morning. I was like, I was actually sat sort of doing something in the background. And I went, what? Sorry, what? I you know, that it was on mute, but I was like, 2 hours in the morning? I get up, I'm like, thank you. Kind of thing. Some days if I'm running late for the gym, but mostly I get up. I usually wake about 6. I wake a couple of times. I'm in the menopause, so I wake really early. And I wake at 6. I usually that's my get up time, but I would be awake and I'd say, you know, God, take this day from me. I always say the step 3 prayer. If I'm out of bed and downstairs, I'll listen to Mark Huston's an AA speaker. He does this brilliant step 3 prayer, and I love it. I can send it to anybody if you want. And it's really long. So that really kind of centers me. But I find, because I usually Monday to Friday go to the gym, I usually listen in there, try and listen. You know, I sometimes jump on a meeting in the gym, the early bird meeting at 7. If I can't get on that because of the Wi-Fi, I kind of try and listen and connect. But then I usually swim, and I really connect in the water for some reason. Really connect more. I've just had a bath before this meeting. Really connects me. It's an interesting thing, but I would talk to God, and that's what it looks like. And then just throughout my day, I would have calls, usually sponsee stroke step calls, outreach calls, meetings, grocery shopping, shouting at the cat, stuff like that, talking to friends. You know, it's pretty normal life. Owning my resentments and fears. Some days I'm really peaceful, and other days it's loud. It's very rarely loud now, because I know what keeps it quiet, if that makes sense. But if I've rushed too much and I've not connected, I chat away to God in my car. I almost look like bonkers in my car. Got a little electric car, and I'm sat there like chatting away. It's really funny. I do that. So it's just about keeping in contact. And I speak to fellows. I always make sure. I usually speak to a fellow, 3 fellows a day, usually, coincidentally, because most of them become friends. Most of them are people I truly love now, you know. Everybody I know in the program I really adore. So, and then my review at night, obviously. Sorry. Reflection and whatever. And, you know, mopping up anything I mightn't have seen.
Thank you, Rita. We do have a request for some of the podcasts that you listen to, any of the good podcasts. So maybe they can email you for a list.
Yeah, I can tell you one of them actually now as well. If you go on the Vision for You website, if it's a God thing, you can listen to Harlan G does one called God's Cold Shower. That's quite good. But I've got tons of really good AA ones that, you know, I think when I first heard AA stuff the first time around, I'd be like, well, I'm not an alcoholic. What does that mean? But I ate like Bill drank. I completely understand it now. It makes complete sense. My addiction makes complete sense now to me. It didn't before. As much, not in the way I had to go deeper for it to make sense.
All right. Another question. Rita, do you have any experience of sponsees who are in other fellowships where there is some tension about where their attention and focus should be, particularly if the sponsor doesn't believe the other sponsee needs OA?
So they're asking if,
I think they're asking if they're in another fellowship and there's a little tension between the, you know, where should the focus be?
there's always a primary. This is just my opinion, but there's always a primary. I have sponsored a lot of people who are treble winners, actually, where they have the beverage and SLA. For some reason, a lot of SLA people come to me back in the day. I don't know. I was never in SLA. I only ever had the food. Though when I went to Vegas, I remember my eyes blinking a lot, thinking, I'm so glad I'm not a gambler, because I honestly could pick up anything. Amazon, Netflix, you name it, I'll get addicted. I think you need to work. I think there's a real myth that it's the credits don't transfer stuff. You've got to work each program in its program in it with regards to food or alcohol. I think if you're drinking a lot and you're crashing the car, or you're, you know, not able to turn up for work, do that first. Get clean on your drink, because you need to sober up to be able to hear stuff, don't you? And then, you know, tackle the other things. But I think step 9 is a very important one in a way. If you've got other addictions, like if you're smoking, for example, or doing other things, it's kind of the step, and this is only my opinion, where you can think about making amends, maybe going to coda, maybe going to A, or maybe going to narcotic. You know, it's a tough one. And you know what? The person might need a way. There's a lot of people in a way who do not need a way. They didn't eat like I ate. I know I am a gutter drunk. I know I'm a gutter drunk with food. Some people aren't. And that can be quite damaging for the sponsee and sponsor, because it could just be that they need something. Do you know what I mean? They need something, some other kind of intervention. It talks about that in the big book, the different types of drinkers. But I was a hard drinker, you know, a hard eater, sorry. So it's just, I think, I'm not sure if that question was meaning, does their sponsor think, the AA sponsor think they don't need a way, or the sponsor themselves who's sponsoring the person in a way doesn't think? It'll become apparent anyway, in like any relationship.
Thank you, Rita. There's the next question. Rita, does your evening review follow a particular format?
Yeah, I use the app. The one it looks like this. It's got a little spanner on it, or a wrench, and it's my spiritual toolkit. But it's the nightly review. You know, when we retire at night, we reflect on our day. That's on page, is it 86? Let me see if I've got that right. Keep it wrong. The nightly review. When we retire at night, page 86, yeah. We review our day. Was I resentful? Was I this? That's all. I do it in the app. Now, I have a couple of sponsees who hate apps, and they write it, they handwrite it. I used to handwrite it, so I had it on Word and did it that way. A lot of people do it that way because it's you can get the longer version on Word. But I'm easy. I like ease. Plus, I've got neuropathy, so it's just easier to type it on the phone. So there you go.
Thank you.
The format's in the book, by the way. Sorry, it's not. I didn't write it. The format is completely in the big book.
Yep. Next question. I've just been diagnosed with depression, never had an issue before OA. How do I deal with thinking that I would not have depression if I wasn't in OA?
The cheeky answer to that is go out and do more research for the food and see how you end up. But, you know, because I had depression as well, and the food just compounded it. It compounds all those kind of things. But you weren't diagnosed with it before you came into OA. It could be that, you know, they say when you come into the 12-step fellowships, you know, the bad news is your feelings are coming back, you know, and that's the thing. You're being made to feel things now that you probably would never have felt had you kept blocking everything with food. And that's the problem, probably. I think, I'm not a doctor, but, you know, your feelings come up, and that's the one thing. When the food goes, everything bubbles to the surface. And that can be quite overwhelming, particularly if there's abuse or whatever there is in the background of what led you here. But, you know, I remember somebody saying once to me in a way, it was brilliant. He says, you know, if you just keep looking back, you just get a sore neck. You know, you've just got to deal with what comes up, deal with it, get rid of it, be honest about it, make amends, clean up your side of the street. And I promise you, it can only get better when you work the steps. To the best of your ability, it can only get better, because that's been my experience, and that was my experience coming from hell, you know.
Thank you, Rita. Any more questions for Rita tonight? I do have one if nobody wants to put one in. Rita, what is your favorite go-to spot in the big book?
Oh gosh, there's so many.
I know there's so many good ones. This is like Sophie's choice.
Yeah. Okay, the men and women drink. I love that whole massive paragraph right down to unless they get a spiritual kind of experience or awakening, because that sums up my disease. But then today, when I was doing a step 11, faith without works is dead. I just love that line, because I am a Christian as well, so that, you know, that line's really important to me. But it was really important. But then every time I read it, I'm like, oh yeah, and I love this. Look, I mean, this is my big book. Do you know what I mean? The whole thing looks like that. So it's I'm like a kid at Christmas. You know what I mean? I actually love the stories as well. There's some stuff in the stories that just page 417. And acceptance is the answer to all my problems. When I accept, you know, a person, place, and thing. But one thing, just quickly, 451, at the end of he lived only to drink, the rewards of sobriety are bountiful and as progressive as a disease they counteract. Certainly among these rewards for me are release from the prison of uniqueness and the realization that participation in the OA way of life is a blessing and privilege beyond estimate. A blessing to live a life free from the pain and degradation of drinking and filled with the joy of useful, sober living, and a privilege to grow in sobriety one day at a time and bring the message of hope as it was brought to me. There you go. That's one of my favorites.
Beautiful. Thank you. Quickly, we have, how do you deal with resentments and fear on a day-to-day basis?
Great question. So I basically write them out. So in that app, there's a resentment and fear inventory, and then I ring it through. But I want to tell you, there are some resentments that I have taken back, and I play the hokey cokey with them. So I write them out. Oh yeah, all of a sudden, and then there was one that kept coming up. My sponsor said, "You need to really thrash this one out. This is the 4th week in a row it's come up." And I had a bad resentment about a family member as well, and that has gone. And you know when you come downstairs and it's quiet, it's really quiet. There's nobody up, and you think even the cat won't wake, because the cat's usually at 4 a.m. meowing in my face anyway. But it's like, that's gone. It's like when you don't think about the food and you suddenly realize you don't think about the food. So it's handed over. The thing is, if you sit in a dirty nappy, you're going to get a rash, man. I'm telling you now. If you sit in your own poop, you've got to get rid of it, no matter how stupid it is. You know, you've just got to write it out, and you've got to see your part in it. I resent, you know, somebody not calling me when they say they did. You know, I don't know what's happened in their life, but I resent that. You know, it's about seeing your part in it. We are like children when it comes to those kind of things. So we, you know, addicts behave like kids really, because we can't handle their emotions.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Rita. That will wrap up our time today. But would everybody, before I turn it back over to Alan, everybody like to unmute for a moment and just, oh, we can't say anything, sorry. How about hearts or thumbs up on your reactions down there for Rita? Thank you so much for being here today.
My absolute pleasure. It was beautiful. Thank you so much.